Millionaire single dad watches waitress feed his disabled daughter and changes her life forever. The bell chimed softly as Gavin Carter stepped into the small diner, the warm scent of fresh bread and roasted coffee filling the air. It wasn't a place he usually frequented, far from the high-end restaurants where business deals were sealed over wine and perfectly plated entree, but tonight wasn't about business. Tonight it was about her. Lily, his 6-year-old daughter, sat in the wheelchair beside him, her small frame wrapped in a light pink coat, her head tilted slightly downward, her fingers twitching against the fabric of her dress. She wasn't making a sound, wasn't looking around like other children might. She was simply there. Gavin's heart clenched. The hostess, a young woman with tired eyes, forced a smile as she grabbed 2 menus. Table for 2. Something quiet, Gavin said, his voice even but firm. The hostess led them to a booth near the back, away from the bustle of the dinner rush. As Gavin settled into the seat across from Lily, he reached for the menu but barely glanced at it. His attention remained on his daughter. Lily, he said gently, are you hungry? She didn't respond. She never did. Gavin exhaled slowly. He hated this feeling, this helplessness that clawed at his chest every time he tried to connect with her. He had spent years building an empire, making impossible decisions, negotiating deals worth millions, yet here, sitting across from his own child, he felt utterly powerless. A waitress approached their table, a small notepad in hand. Good evening, my name is Vanessa and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Gavin looked up. She was young, mid-20s maybe. There was a warmth in her hazel eyes that didn't match the exhaustion he recognized in most service workers. She had a light dust of flour on her sleeve, as if she had been in the kitchen just moments before. What can I get started for you? She asked, her tone light, unassuming. Gavin cleared his throat. Grilled chicken for me and for my daughter. Something soft. Soup maybe? Vanessa's gaze flickered to Lily, her brow furrowing slightly. Is she okay with chicken noodle? It's homemade. Gavin hesitated, then nodded. That's fine, great, I'll be right back. As Vanna walked away, Gavin reached for his phone, scrolling mindlessly through emails, but his mind was elsewhere. Would Lily eat tonight? Would she push the spoon away like always? Minutes later, Vanessa returned, placing the bowl of soup in front of Lily and the grilled chicken in front of Gavin. Let me know if you need anything else, she said before stepping away. Gavin sighed, grabbing the spoon. All right, sweetheart, let's try. Okay. He scooped a small amount of soup and brought it toward L's lips, but before the spoon even got close, her hand jerked up, knocking it away. The metal clattered against the plate, droplets of broth staining the white tablecloth. A few customers turned to look. Gavin clenched his jaw, frustration tightening his chest, not at her but at himself. He reached for the spoon again, his voice softer now. Lily, please. No reaction. She just sat there, her small fingers gripping the hem of her dress, lost in a world he couldn't reach. Gavin exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over his face. He was so focused on not losing his patience that he almost didn't notice when someone stepped beside him. May I? Vanessa. She was kneeling by Lily's side, her expression unreadable. Gavin frowned. What, may I try? She asked again, nodding toward the spoon. Gavin hesitated. Normally he'd say no. Lily wasn't some charity case. He had hired some of the best caregivers, therapists, specialists in the country, and none of them had gotten through to her. But something in Vanessa's expression, gentle but certain, made him pause. Wordlessly he handed her the spoon. Vanessa shifted so that she was at eye level with Lily. She didn't immediately bring the spoon to the little girl's lips. Instead she spoke softly, warmly. Hi, Lily, she said, as if speaking to an old friend. Lily didn't respond, but Vanessa didn't falter. You know, Vanessa continued, dipping the spoon into the soup, when I was little my mom used to tell me that soup is like a warm hug for your tummy. She lifted the spoon slightly but didn't force it. Would you like to try a little hug? Gavin watched, stunned. He had never seen someone speak to Lily like that, like she was listening, like she understood. For a moment nothing happened, and then Lily's fingers twitched. Gavin's breath caught. Vanessa smiled. Just one little sip, sweetheart. Slowly, cautiously she brought the spoon to Lily's lips, and this time she didn't pull away. The warm broth touched her lips, and after a few seconds she swallowed. Gavin stared. It was just a sip, a single sip, but for a girl who refused food unless forced, it was everything. Then something even more unbelievable happened. Lily looked at Vanessa, not past her, not through her, but at her, and then she smiled. Gavin felt the world tilt. Lily hadn't smiled in years, not since her mother had died. He didn't know what to do with this moment. The diner, the other customers, the hum of conversation, all of it disappeared. There was only Lily and this woman who had somehow reached her in a way no one else had. His voice came out hoarse. How did you do that? Vanna looked up at him, her has-on eyes warm but filled with something else, something unreadable. I just spoke to her, she said simply, as if it was the easiest thing in the world. Gavin didn't have an answer to that. He just sat there staring at the woman who had just shattered everything he thought he knew about his daughter, and for the first time in a very long time Gavin Carter felt something stir in his chest. Hope. Gavin couldn't sleep that night. Long after after he had taken Lily home, tucked her into bed and retreated to his study. The image of Vanessa kneeling beside his daughter haunted him, the way she had spoken to Lily, the way Lily had responded, and that smile. Lily hadn't smiled at anyone, not since his wife died. Gavin sat at his desk staring blankly at the whiskey in his hand. He had hired specialists, therapists and caregivers, yet none of them had gotten through to her like Vanessa had. A waitress and a small diner. Who was she? He reached for his phone and after a brief hesitation called his assistant. Find out everything you can about a woman named Vanessa Lane, he said. The next evening Gavin returned to the diner. It was quieter than the night before. The dinner rush having died down, he spotted Vanessa clearing a table near the back, her sleeves rolled up, a smudge of flour on her cheek. She moved quickly, efficiently, like someone who had done this for years. Gavin walked straight to her. She looked up, startled, as he approached. Mr. Carter. Vanessa, he said, his tone unreadable. We need to talk. She wiped her hands on her apron, glancing at the other customers. I'm working, this won't take long. Vanessa exhaled, then motioned for him to follow her toward the service station, away from prying eyes. Gavin didn't waste time. You were incredible with Lily last night. Vanessa blinked, clearly not expecting that. She shrugged. I just treated her like a kid, not a patient. Exactly. Silence stretched between them. Gavin studied her carefully, searching for something, a hesitation, an answer she wasn't giving. You've worked with kids like her before, haven't you? He asked. Vanessa stiffened. She shook her head. I just used to babysit, that's all. Gavin narrowed his eyes. You're lying. Vanessa's lips pressed into a tight line. Look, I don't know what you're implying, but I did some digging. Gavin cut in, his voice calm but firm. You studied special education at NYU. You were top of your class. Vanessa's breath hitched. Then 2 years ago you dropped out. Gavin continued, watching her closely. No explanation, no record of where you went after that, and now you're working as a waitress. Vanessa's hands clenched into fists at her sides. I don't see how that's any of your business, she said quietly. Gavin leaned forward slightly. It is, if you're the only person who's ever made my daughter smile. Vanessa flinched just barely, but Gavin saw it. For a moment neither of them spoke. Then Gavin sighed. Come work for me. Vanessa's head snapped up. What, be Lily's caregiver? Gavin said. She trusts you, she responds to you. His voice softened. She needs you. Vanessa stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then she laughed, but there was no humor in it. You don't even know me, she said, shaking her head, and you think hiring me is a good idea. I know enough, Gavin countered. I know you're smart, you're patient, and I know that whatever reason you have for walking away from your past, it wasn't because you weren't good at it. Vanessa inhaled sharply, looking away. For the first time Gavin saw something in her eyes, pain deepen and spoken. I can't, she whispered. Gavin frowned. Vanessa, I can't, she repeated firmer this time. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not the person you think I am. Gavin was silent for a long moment. Tell me why, he finally said. Vanessa hesitated, her throat working as if she were swallowing back something heavy. Then she shook her head. I have tables to clear. And just like that she turned and walked away. Gavin watched her go, his jaw tightening. Whatever had made Vanessa Lane walk away from the career she was meant for, it was still haunting her, and for the first time in years Gavin wanted to know why. Gavin Carter wasn't the kind of man who let things go when something didn't make sense. He dug deeper when someone told him no. He found out why, and Vanessa Lane, she was a mystery he couldn't ignore. After their last conversation he couldn't stop thinking about the look in her eyes, the way she had flinched, the way her voice had cracked ever so slightly before she walked away. She wasn't just some waitress who happened to be good with kids, she was running from something, and Gavin intended to find out what. It didn't take long. With his resources, tracking down Vanessa's past was easy. She had been a star student at NYU, specializing in special education and therapy. Professors had called her brilliant, compassionate, one of the most promising students they had ever seen. Then 2 years ago she vanished. No diploma, no graduation, just disappeared. Gavin frowned as he skimmed through the reports. Why would someone walk away from something they excelled at? Then he found the answer, a small obituary, a boy's face, bright-eyed, smiling, Caleb Lane, age 10. Gavin's stomach dropped. The obituary was brief, no details, just that the boy had passed away suddenly, but it was enough. Vanessa Lane hadn't just studied special education, she had lived it, and she had lost someone that night. Gavin went back to the diner. He didn't sit at a table, he didn't order anything. He waited. When Vanessa finally noticed him standing near the entrance, she sighed, rubbing a hand over her face. Mr. Carter, you're back, we need to talk, Gavin said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Vanessa crossed her arms. I thought we already did. Not about this. Something in his tone made her hesitate. Gavin motioned to the door. Let's go outside. Vanessa's lips pressed into a tight line, but after a moment she untied her apron and followed him. The night air was crisp, the street quiet except for the occasional car passing by. Gavin turned to face her. I know about Caleb. Vanessa froze, her breath hitched, and for a split second she looked like she had been punched in the stomach. G's chest tightened, but he didn't stop. I know he was your brother. I know he had cerebral palsy, and I No he don't, Vanessa whispered, her voice barely audible. Gavin's jaw clenched. Why didn't you tell me? Vanessa let out a shaky laugh, but there was no humor in it. Because it's none of your business, that's why. Gavin took a step closer. You walked away from something you were meant to do, and I need to know why so you can fix me. Offer me another job. I don't want. Gavin didn't back down. I need to know because you're the only person who's ever gotten through to my daughter, and if you're not going to help her, I at least deserve to know why. Vanessa shook her head, wrapping her arms around herself like she was holding something in. Caleb was my everything, she finally said, her voice hollow. My parents were never around much, so it was just me and him. I spent my whole life learning how to take care of him. I promised him I'd always be there, that no matter what I'd help him get better. She took a shaky breath, but I couldn't. The words cracked like glass. Gavin's chest tightened. Vanessa let out a bitter laugh. One night he got sick, nothing serious at first, just a fever, but it got worse and then worse. By the time we got him to the hospital, her voice broke. It was too late. Gavin swallowed hard. Vanessa wiped angrily at her eyes. I was studying to help kids like him. I was supposed to know what to do, but I didn't. I failed him. She looked up at Gavin, then her eyes burning. And I won't fail again. Gavin stared at her, his heart pounding. This was why she had refused his offer, not because she didn't care, but because she cared too much, because losing one child had broken her and she was terrified of getting close to another. Vanessa shook her head, stepping back. So now you know, happy? Gavin didn't answer. For the first time in his life he didn't know what to say. Vanessa hadn't planned on saying yes when Gavin made the offer again. 1 week, just try it for 1 week. She had every intention of refusing, but something in his voice, in the quiet desperation behind his usually controlled demeanor, made her hesitate. And then there was Lily. Vanessa could still see the little girl's soft smile from that night at the diner, the way her eyes had focused on her, the way she had responded to a simple kindness. It had been so long since Vanessa felt like she was good at something, since she had felt needed so, against every instinct screaming at her to walk away. She said, 1 week, that's all. The Carter estate was nothing like she expected. It wasn't just a house, it was a mansion, a sleek modern fortress tucked behind iron gates and manicured garden. Vanessa followed Gavin inside, clutching the strap of her bag as she took in the towering ceilings, the marble floors, the vast open spaces that felt too big, too empty. This way, Gavin said, leading her down a hallway. They stopped at a door slightly ajar. Lily's room. Vanessa stepped inside and immediately felt a lump form in her throat. It was beautiful, soft pastel colors, shelves lined with books and stuffed animals, a floor-to-ceiling window that led in golden afternoon light, and in the center of it all, curled up in her wheelchair, was Lily. She didn't look up as they entered. Gavin exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. She's been quieter than usual since her mother passed. Vanessa glanced at him. His expression was unreadable, but the tension in his jaw told her everything. He blamed himself. She turned back to Lily and knew that feeling all too well. The first 2 days were rough. Lily acknowledged Vanessa's presence. She flinched when Vanna tried to guide her hand toward a toy, turned away when spoken to. Vanna felt the doubt creeping in. What if I can't do this anymore? What if I fail her the way I failed Caleb? But then on the third day something changed. Vanessa had been reading aloud, her voice soft even though Lily didn't seem to be listening. Then, just as she was about to close the book, she noticed it. Lily's fingers were tapping. It was small, barely perceptible, but it was in perfect rhythm with Vanessa's words. Vanessa's breath caught. You like this story, don't you? She asked gently. No response, but the tapping continued, and for the first time Vanessa felt hope. That night Vanessa sat beside Lily's bed, smoothing out the blankets. Lily's eyes were half closed, her breathing even. Vanessa hesitated for a moment, then in a voice barely above a whisper she began to sing. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. Lily stirred slightly, but she didn't pull away. You make me happy when skies are gray. Vanessa's throat tightened. This was the same lullaby she used to sing to Caleb, the one he had always asked for. Even on his worst days she hadn't sung it since he died. She had promised herself she never would, but now as she watched Lily's small fingers curl around the edge of the blanket she couldn't stop. Outside the room, Gavin stood frozen in the hallway. He had been passing by when he heard Vanessa's voice. He had expected resistance from Lily. He had expected that this experiment, this 1 week, would prove futile, but now standing there listening to that soft aching lullaby, he saw something he hadn't seen in months. Lily was sleeping peacefully, no tossing, no whimpering, no haunted dreams that left her gasping for breath. Gavin swallowed hard, gripping the door frame. For the first time since his wife died, his daughter was at peace, and it wasn't because of him, it was because of her. Gavin Carter had spent years building an empire. He had closed deals worth millions, negotiated with some of the most ruthless businessmen in the world, and turned struggling companies into powerhouses, but none of it had ever felt as rewarding as watching his daughter take her first steps toward trusting someone again. And it was all all because of Vanessa. The changes were small at first. Gavin found himself lingering in the background whenever Vanessa worked with Lily. He told himself he was just observing, just making sure this experiment was worth it, but then he started joining in. At first it was little things, helping Lily stack blocks, holding her hand during exercises, sitting beside her as Vanessa read stories. Then without even realizing it, he was there every day. One afternoon as Vanessa guided Lily through a simple stretching routine, she glanced up and saw Gavin watching, not just watching, really watching. There was something in his expression, something soft, vulnerable. "You don't have to be here, you know," Vanessa murmured. Gavin didn't look away from Lily, who was gripping his fingers tightly as she tried to steady herself. "I do." Vanessa frowned. "Why?" Gavin exhaled, his gaze never leaving his daughter. "Because I should have been here a long time ago." Something in Vanessa's chest tightened. She had assumed Gavin was just another wealthy businessman, too busy to raise his own child, but now looking at him, really looking at him, she saw the truth. He wasn't absent because he didn't care, he was absent because he didn't know how not to be. The more time Gavin spent with them, the more Vanessa noticed him changing. He laughed more, not the polite, restrained chuckle she had heard before, but a real laugh, deep and unguarded. He learned how to soothe Lily when she was frustrated. He learned how to be present. And Vanessa felt something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. She had spent so long convincing herself that she wasn't meant for this anymore, that she would only fail if she tried again. But with Lily it didn't feel like work, it felt like home. One evening after a particularly good session, Vanessa and Gavin sat on the back patio watching the sun dip below the horizon. Lily was already asleep inside, exhausted but happy. Vanessa sipped her tea, feeling the warmth spread through her. "She's improving so much." Gavin nodded, his gaze distant. "Because of you." Vanessa shook her head. "Because of herself. I'm just helping her see what she's capable of." Gavin turned to her, then his blue eyes intense. "You do that for everyone, don't you?" Vanessa blinked. "What, you make people believe they can do things they never thought possible." His voice was quiet, but there was something else beneath it, something Vanessa wasn't ready to name. She looked away. "I used to think that." Gavin studied her for a long moment, then almost too softly he said, "You still do." Vanessa's heart pounded. For the first time since she had met him, she saw Gavin Carter not as a billionaire, not as a distant father, but as a man, and that terrified her. It happened so fast. One moment they were sitting there, the air thick with unspoken words. The next, Gavin reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. His fingers traced the back of hers, his touch light, testing. "Vanessa," he murmured. She looked up and then he kissed her. It wasn't urgent or demanding. He was slow, careful, like he was giving her time to stop him, but she didn't. For one brief, stolen moment she let herself feel the warmth of his lips, the way his hand cued her cheek, the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. And then reality crashed in. Vanessa jerked back, her breath unsteady. Gavin's brows furrowed. "Vanessa, I can't," she whispered, standing abruptly. Gavin reached for her, but she took a step back. I'm sorry," she stammered, shaking her head. "I shouldn't have. This was a mistake." His expression darkened. "A mistake?" Vanessa swallowed hard. "I can't do this, Gavin." He stood, then frustration flickering in his gaze. "Why not?" "Because I can't." Her voice broke. She took a breath, gripping the railing behind her. "I can't lose another person I care about." Gavin's expression softened. Vanessa, but she was already turning away, retreating inside, leaving Gavin standing there, his heart pounding. And for the first time in years he realized how much he didn't want to be alone anymore. Vanessa had spent years building walls around herself, convincing herself that distance was safer, that caring too much only led to loss, but somehow, without even realizing it, Gavin and Lily had slipped through the cracks, and that scared her more than anything. She made the decision. The next morning she walked into Gavin's office, heart hammering against her ribs, fingers curled into tight fists at her sides. He looked up from his desk, surprised. "Vanessa," she swallowed hard. "I'm quitting." The words felt like knives in her throat, but she forced them out. Gavin's expression darkened. He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms across his chest. "Come again." Vanessa kept her voice steady. "I can't do this anymore." Gavin's jaw clenched. "Why?" "Because I care too much. Because I'm terrified. Because I don't know how to lose you." But she couldn't say that. Instead she forced a small shrug. "It was always temporary. I never planned on staying forever." Gavin's eyes flashed with something unreadable. "That's it? You're just walking away?" Vanessa nodded, even as her stomach twisted painfully. "Why?" Gavin exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "And what about Lily?" Vanna flinched. "She'll be fine." "She won't." His voice was low, tense. "You know she won't." Vanna bit her lip, looking away. She couldn't afford to think about Lily, about the way she had started reaching out, trusting again, the way her small fingers had clutched at Vanessa's sleeve just last night. If she let herself think about it, she'd break. So she forced herself to meet Gavin's gaze and said, "The cruise TV." His expression hardened. "You just think you do." She continued, ignoring the way her heart screamed at her to stop. "But I was never supposed to be a permanent solution. You're just looking for someone to." She hesitated, then delivered the final blow. "To replace your wife." The silence that followed was Deafening. Gavin's entire body tensed, his hands gripping the edge of his desk. When he finally spoke, his voice was dangerously calm. Get out. Vanessa's throat burned. Gavin, get out. Vanessa turned and walked away, every step feeling like it was ripping her apart. Lily stopped eating 3 days after Vanessa left. She stopped playing, stopped responding, stopped smiling. Gavin tried. God, he tried. He sat with her during meals, read her favorite stories, played the game Vanessa had taught them, but it was never the same. Lily didn't look at him the way she had looked at Vanessa. She didn't light up the way she had in Vanessa's presence, and Gavin hated it. Hated that he wasn't enough, hated that Vanna had walked away like they meant nothing, but most of all he hated how much he missed her. Gavin Carter had always been a man of logic. He built his empire on cold, calculated decisions, never letting emotions cloud his judgment, but now IIC wasn't enough, because no amount of reasoning could fix the emptiness that Vanessa left behind. And worse, he wasn't the only one suffering. Lily was slipping away. At first it was subtle. She refused to eat her favorite foods. She turned away when Gavin tried to help her with simple tasks. She no longer reached for his hand. Then one night he walked past her room and found her curled in a ball, silently crying into her pillow. Something inside him shattered. Gavin sat beside her, his chest tight. Lily, she didn't respond. He reached out, brushing her hair from her face. Talk to me, sweetheart. Lily sniffled, then in a voice so quiet it almost broke him, she whispered, where's Vanessa? Gavin closed his eyes. He had spent weeks telling himself that he could fix this, that if he just tried hard enough Lily would move on, but he was wrong, because Vanna wasn't just some temporary caregiver. She was family, and Gavin had been too blind, too stubborn, too afraid to admit how much she meant to them. But not anymore. The diner was busy when Gavin walked in, but he didn't care. He wasn't here for the customers, for the food, for anything except her, and this time he wasn't alone. Lily sat in his arms, her tiny fingers gripping his coat, her face pale from weeks of sadness. Vanessa was behind the counter, scribbling on a notepad. She looked tired, thinner than before, her hair messily tied back, but when she looked up and saw them she froze. For a long moment no one moved. Then Vanessa's eyes landed on Lily and her breath hitched. She was around the counter in seconds, kneeling beside them, her hands trembling as she reached for the little girl. Lily, her voice cracked, oh sweetheart. Lily lifted her head, staring at Vanessa like she wasn't sure if she was real. Then slowly, painfully, she lifted one hand and touched Vanessa's cheek. The moment Vanessa felt that small familiar warmth, the dam broke. Tears spilled down her face as she pulled Lily into her arms, holding her like she'd never let go. Gavin watched, his throat tight. Then quietly he said the words he should have said weeks ago, I need you, Vanessa. Vanessa stilled, her arms tightened around Lily as she looked up at him, her hazel eyes swimming with unshed tears. Gavin took a step closer. I don't just need you because of Lily, he continued, his voice raw, unguarded. I need you because of me. Vanessa's breath hitched. Gavin, I was scared, he admitted. I was scared of letting you in, of what it would mean, but I can't. He exhaled shakily. I can't do this without you. Vanessa's lips parted, but no words came out, because she wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him, but she was still so afraid. Lily's small fingers curled around the spoon, trembling slightly as she lifted it toward her mouth. The dining room was silent, every breath held as she struggled to keep her grip. Then for the first time in her life she fed herself a single bite, a small hesitant motion, but to Gavin and Vanessa it was everything. Lily blinked in surprise, then looked up at Vanessa, her eyes wide. Vanessa's throat tightened. You did it, sweetheart. Gavin let out a slow breath, a smile breaking across his face. You really did. Lily giggled softly, a sound Gavin hadn't heard in so long, and in that moment he knew it wasn't just about what Vanessa had done for Lily, it was about what she had done for him. For the first time since his wife's passing he wasn't afraid of loving someone again. He reached into his pocket, his fingers tightening around the small velvet box he had been carrying for days. Vanessa turned to him, still wiping away happy tears. What? Gavin exhaled slowly. Then before she could say another word he dropped to one knee. Vanessa's breath caught. Gavin, marry me, he said softly. Vanessa's hands flew to her mouth. Lily, completely unaware of the gravity of the moment, clapped her hands. Vanessa, say yes. Vanessa let out a watery laugh, shaking her head in disbelief. Gavin reached for her hand, his touch firm, steady. I love you, he said simply, and I don't just want you in Lily's life, I want you in mine. Vanessa's eyes filled again, but this time it wasn't fear, it was something else, something new, something safe. She let out a shaky breath, then whispered yes. Gavin slid the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms, holding her tight as Lily cheered beside them. For the first time in years they weren't just three broken people trying to survive, they were a family. Love isn't just about finding someone, it's about choosing them over and over again. Gavin had spent years believing that love was something he had lost forever. Vanessa had spent just as long convincing herself that love was too painful to risk again, but in the end it wasn't about fear, it was about Lily's laughter filling their home, about G having finally finding the courage to love again, about Vanessa realizing that she wasn't destined to lose everyone she cared about, because real love isn't just about attraction, it's about sacrifice, trust, and finding a family in the most unexpected places. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories for more heartfelt tales that remind us all of the power of love, resilience, and second chances, because sometimes the family we find is even more powerful than the one we're born into.